Hello, how you doing? It's Mike, aka Prophet Saul. Well, we're between Christmas and New Year's, and I thank God it was a wonderful Christmas. I'm looking forward to a strong 2020, and I'm happy and I'm grateful. I'm thankful for everything God's given me and what God's doing for me, and God's really protected me throughout this year. Um, I'd like to take a moment just to speak about something that I see all around. Um, Something that basically is very rarely spoken of from the pulpits, and it's very sad because they should be doing this. They should be mentioning it. They should be addressing it, because the church should be the moral compass, and it hasn't been for a long time. That's one of the reasons things have decayed in this nation so far, for so long. Um, and the one thing I'm seeing through our culture that alarms me is this obsessive violence. We have violence, ethnic group against ethnic group, um, armed assaults, political violence, and all over the U.S. culture, violence on top of violence on top of violence. And it really alarms me because the pulpit should have been filled with messages addressing this, and it hasn't happened. So I'm going to go into the Word of God, and I'm going to address an aspect of violence. We see that violence is something that God hates. God created man to be in harmony with one another. And God hates that which does harm the man. And we call that sin. And that's why I want you to turn away from sin. Because sin kills, sin does damage. Death enters into sin, so he wants you to be free from sin so that you walk the abundant life that he came to give you. That's why Christ came. Christ came to give you life and give it to you abundantly. In order to live that life, you have to turn your way over to God. You have to turn away from sin. You have to turn away from selfish desires and ambitions, and receive his very nature to walk in the blessings of God. There's one thing Christ had that no man had since the time of Adam to the time of the birth of Christ, was the ability to know good and evil and choose good and reject evil. Before that, man always has the tendency to know good and evil and embrace evil and reject good. And evil basically involves you knowingly not doing something you know you should have done, or knowingly doing something you shouldn't have done. So it's knowingly doing the wrong thing and knowingly not doing the right thing. And everybody who's going through this video has done this. You know the right thing to do and you didn't do it. You did the wrong thing to do and you did it anyway. But Christ came to give that ability unto man. Through his death, burial, and resurrection, he cleanses you through his blood because he's paid the price for your sin, your separation from God. And he's given you spirit so you can walk as he walked. That wasn't nothing like I was planning to share today. And I suppose that was there for somebody. Let's get into what I was talking about. It's about violence in the culture. Now we go into Genesis 6:11, and we're dealing with the state of the culture before the flood. And the flood was basically God's justice upon that entire world that had turned away from him. Let's go to Genesis 6:11. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. All flesh has corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me. The earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. The violence, God hated the sight of it. And it got so bad in the free flood world, God said, I ain't going to have this. I'm going to destroy the entire earth. And he did it by a great flood. And that entire worldwide culture was destroyed. And the marker before it was violence. Now let's go into further in Genesis. I'm skipping over to Genesis 19, starting at verse 1. And there came two angels to Sodom, even, and Lot sat down at the gate of Sodom. And seeing them, rose up to meet them. He bowed himself down with his face towards the ground. Two angels came to Lot, and he saw they were angels, and he bowed before them. And he said, Bow now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house. Tarry all night, and wash your feet. And ye shall rise up early, and go on your way. And they shall say, Nay, but we will abide in the streets all night. And he pressed upon them greatly. And he turned unto them, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round about, old and young, and all the people from every quarter. Notice, these two angels came to Sodom, came to Lot. Lot recognized them as different strangers. Lot did the godly thing and brought him into his home and gave him a feast. Now the men of Sodom, what happened? They found that there were strangers in there, and they surrounded the house. Let's take it from there, verse 19, verse 4. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, and the people from every quarter. So all over the city, all these men came, and they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are these men which come unto thee in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Basically, give them to us so we may rape them. Do you see a violent connotation here? They want to rape these two men. And the entire city is involved in this. All the men of the entire city. You know that rape is actually very violent. Okay? And he called on Lot, on him. I read that part. Let's go to verse 6. And Lot went out the door unto them, and shut the door behind him. He was protecting them. And he said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, I have two daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you. And do not do to them as it is good to you in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing. For therefore they came under the shadow of my roof. He was going to hand them their daughters. Which, I don't know how to react to that one. I don't. But basically, Lot is still protecting these people. These two angels. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one thing came into sojourn, and he will needs to be judged. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break down the door. Notice said, Heck with that, we don't want these two girls of yours. We want the guys. And we're going to do far worse to you than we're going to do to them. Notice how violent it gotten. They're threatening Lot with physical violence for protecting these two strangers. Now, up to this point, these are angels visiting. They haven't done anything. So basically, they're violent against innocent people. And we see that a lot in this culture, violence against the innocent. People who have done nothing. Especially in my city, I see it in Philadelphia a lot. People being attacked, mocked, ridiculed, even hit for no reason at all. Remember a couple years ago when they had that knockout game, when you had these young kids walking around and trying to knock out people for absolutely no reason at all. That's actually the same mindset that's going on here. Right? Let's go to verse 12. No, we'll go further. Verse 10. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the door, into the house to them, and shut the door. Basically, pulled Lot in and shut the door behind him. And they smote the men, and they smote the men that were at the door, the angels. They smote the men that were at the door with blindness, both great and small, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. The angels actually saved Lot. Pulled Lot in, closed the door, and then struck him blind. And the men said unto Lot, the angels are speaking to Lot now, hast thou there besides any son-in-law, and thy sons and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So we see the aspect that comes right before God's judgment was this violence. Violence without reason, violence without cause. So we have it, the pre-flood world, before the final justice of God was given out, there was this attitude of extreme violence. We see it again in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. We see the violence. Now we're going on to Jeremiah. And I'm almost done here. Jeremiah 6, 7, and 8. Okay, we're going to go to Jeremiah 6. As the fountain casteth out her waters, so he casteth out her wickedness. Violence and spoil is heard in her. Before me continually. Great is the wounds thereof. Be thou instructed, O Jerusalem. Let the soul depart from thee, lest I make thee desolate, a land not inhabited. Whoops. Now this is severe. This is right before God poured out his judgment upon Israel, because they have turned judgment upon Judah, because they turned away from God. And the land was laid desolate. Babylon came in, and they totally destroyed the land. And they lay desolate for 70 years until Israel actually came back. Because God had mercy upon them, because they sought him out, they repented, he forgave them and brought them back after 70 years. Notice, as a fountain casts out her waters, she casted her wickedness. Violence and spoil is heard in her. Violence and spoil. The sound of violence and spoil was all over Israel, all over Judah. And this is God, how God responded to it. Be thou instructed, O Jerusalem, lest my soul depart from thee, lest I make thee desolate, a land not inhabited. And this is very severe. We see violence poured out in the streets of Philadelphia, and the thing common with Judah at this point and the state of the U.S., that Judah actually was involved in that time's version of abortion. It was called the worship of Moloch, where they literally sacrificed babies to Moloch, put infants into the hands of Moloch, and literally sacrificed them. We do the same thing today. The practice is actually abortion. It was a form of population control. It has nothing to do with women's rights as it's being portrayed. They simply want to keep the population under a certain number. That's why abortion is being pushed the way it is. But God has a very negative view about it. He considers that violent. And not to mention, we go the way the politicians went up. They started pushing full-term abortion. Now, you think of this. What is the difference between the child that is about to come out of the womb and the one that still actually comes out? You have to come out with a difference. We're talking about a difference of 2 or 3 seconds in development. The one that's gone full term and the one that actually comes out. If you can't make a difference, then that's murder. And the murder, innocent blood, cries out to God for judgment. We see that within the story of Cain and Abel. Then innocent blood cries out to God for justice. And we are reaping what we sowed. We have basically done violence to these children, and God, who sits on a throne that is basically established on justice and the administration of justice, is allowing a spirit of violence to enter in. And there is a way back. It's a way to end the violence. It's not gun control. It's basically turning your heart to God. Saying, Lord, I see the violence on my culture. I see your judgment towards it. Father, have mercy upon me. And Jesus had paid the price for this sin through his blood. He paid the price. He paid the judgment of God, the justice of God. For your sin, it was God poured upon his own son at Calvary. Justice has been done. If you receive him into your heart and confess your sin, you will be saved. You want this to end? You want the violence to cease? Give your heart over to Christ. Confess it. Turn to him to be free from it. And what happens when that happens? You're no longer an agent of violence. God can make you an agent of peace. God can make you an agent of restoration. You can come out and do this culture of violence and be restored unto God through Jesus Christ. And all you have to do is ask for it. And I'm going to address one last thing. There's a lie I heard from the pulpit over and over. I'm going to address it right now. You accept Christ, you don't have to give up anything. That's not true. You have to give up your sin. Why? Because Christ came to give you life and give you it abundantly. And death enters in through sin. Let go of that which kills so you can make gain that which gives life. I leave you with this. The choice is yours. Shalom, and have a happy new year.